Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to be here, sharing some of my stories in my journey with education technology and the education space. So let me start with this. Maybe not this one. Oh.
No. So much for technology.
No.
Our chief technology officer.
No problem. So on the way to Berlin, I caught a cold, and I'm on a medication, so I feel a little bit dizzy, and maybe that will make my presentation a little more interesting. I hope. Throughout my presentation, you will be hearing a lot of words that start with a P. So you can think about good words that start with a P. I hope that you will be able to capture some of those words, and I'll question you at the end of the presentation how many times I mention these words that start with a P. So think about those. And then also, in my presentation, I'll be questioning about a little bit of Stanford, because since I'm from Stanford, I just want to make sure that everybody knows about some of the unique history of Stanford University. So I'll be quizzing you on that as well. Thank you. Let's see if this works now. So we'll start with a quiz on the Stanford University. Are you ready? Yes? All right. So here you go. The first one. Who gave Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the two Stanford University students, $100,000 check to start Google company in 1998? Do you know? You don't know? All right. So these two Stanford students were given $100,000 check by this person, Andy Bechtolsheim, a former Stanford University student who co-founded Sun Microsystems with another Stanford student, Scott McNeely. So that was the answer. Did you get that right? No? Yeah? All right. So what does a Sun, the Sun Microsystems, the company name, Sun, what does Sun stand for? Does anyone know? Can you guess what that might be? You got it. Stanford University Network. So that was a little harder or easier? All right. So next question, Yahoo. You know, Jerry Yang and David Filone, these two Stanford students who were fiddling with their computers. And back in 1994, that's when they started to think about, why don't we develop a catalog of the internet? So that's what they came up with. So what was the original URL? That was the original URL of Yahoo before they became a company. akibono.stanford.edu/Yahoo. Akibono is a famous Hawaiian sumo player. I have no idea why they got that name to be their first URL for their project. So this one is really easy. Bill Hewlett and David Packard graduated in electrical engineering from Stanford University. What company did they establish? It's too easy, right? HP. A big proponent of internet television who completed his master's degree in CS at Stanford founded what company? Internet TV. Does that ring any bell? Internet TV? Netflix. Isn't Netflix operating in Germany? No, not really. Maybe that's why. All right. So much about Stanford. So I just wanted to give you an idea that a lot of things started from Stanford in this very unique ecosystem here in Silicon Valley, as you can see in the map. So technology has been the major driver, obviously, of economic development worldwide. And interestingly, besides all that exciting technological development, there is something that's brewing at the same time, and that is riding on the development of a technology. What is that sector? Can you guess what that might be? What sector is riding on that technology sector? Growth. Education. Global education market. It's a $4.5 trillion in 2012, and it is expected to be $6.3 trillion in 2017. It's growing rapidly. And here are some of the companies that have been operating in the education space. I'm sure you know some of them. Blackboard, Canvas, Desire to Learn. These are sort of the learning management systems and student information systems, as well as content providers. These are the major players in the education system. Interestingly, in year 2013 alone, just year 2013 alone, $1 billion have been invested in the education space, education ventures. These are some of the companies that have received some funding from the venture capital communities. Coursera, Udacity, as you all know, and lynda.com, Open English, K-12, etc. And some of these companies have received funding from Excel Partners and TCV, KPCV, etc. What is it giving us is that education market is not only growing, but it's gaining a lot of attention, and it is riding on the growth of the technology advancement. Some of these companies have received Series D funding. 2U, which helps universities to start with online education program. If any university, if they don't know if they don't have a clue about what online education is, they can call 2U, and they'll come in, they'll set you up, they'll put together your online program. That's what the company does. So there are other companies, but what's interesting here is that these are Series D investment phase, meaning that they've gone through ABC already. They are ready to go IPO pretty soon. So when they go IPO, you probably want to buy some of their stocks. So that's kind of the sort of opening stage for you to get the understanding how exciting time it is in the education space and how it is growing rapidly at the same time. And we hear a lot of words about MOOCs. And as we hear about MOOCs, sometimes we kind of get excited about it, but there's already anti-MOOC movement. Anti-MOOC movement already. There are a lot of people who are so skeptical and negative about MOOCs. So what I want to say here this morning is that MOOCs, in their current forms, they are not sustainable. And let me repeat that. MOOCs in their current forms are not sustainable. So that's going to be the sort of the one of the key points that I'm going to make in my presentation. I'm interested in something that's fundamentally transformative, something that's paradigm shifting, not just flipping in the same box, but something that's different, like, you know, caterpillar becoming a butterfly, you know, something that was crawling, but now it's flying. You know, that sort of thing. Why can't we have that in the education space? Why don't we go out of that box instead of flipping in the same box? Get out of the box. You know, that's something that I'm seeking in the education space. There's been some good, positive movement in the online education space. Because of the MOOCs, they've gotten a lot of attention, and because of that attention, they kind of got the approval that online education is going to stay. And it's not a substandard programs. It's not something inferior to traditional classroom-based learning. Online education is going to stay, and it is going to be one of major players in the education space. So MOOCs sort of help them get them the approval, and MOOCs certainly legitimized the online education. So they got the stamp. However, online education is not new. I don't know if you had one of these modems in the old days, in 1987, that's when they started the online education. They already had these interesting features. You probably didn't have any pictures or any videos, but at least they had a conference room, profiles, and then the capability of posting messages and exchanging ideas and so forth. They had that already in 1987. It was just that they were not legitimized. They were not considered as a real learning opportunity for students. So that's why people didn't pay attention. back then. In the meantime, companies like Google, YouTube, and Wikipedia, they sort of helped the online education space to grow and be able to function more effectively. And I think that we have to give them a little bit of a credit for doing that. But they were growing in one condition, and that's a very important condition in the higher education space. It's not effective anymore. The higher education institutes, the organizations, the way that they are structured, it's not effective. And that is the condition that we're facing. And I am not sure why people are seeking higher education. People probably have different reasons and causes. But the message that we are giving, I think, is that if you go to college, you make more money. Therefore, you should go to college. That has been the main message in the mainstream media. And I think that is wrong. I think that is a wrong goal to pursue, to go to college. It's not to make more money. It's not to get up in the career ladder, but something else. At the same time, higher education space, probably it's not the case here in Germany, but in the US, the cost of education is skyrocketing. It's getting more and more expensive. Those students who are going to college, they oftentimes take more than 4 years, and they end up getting big debt that they have to pay back to the government if they have taken the federal loan. So that is a serious challenge to educate the students, especially in the US. So there have been a lot of interesting organizations that have claimed that they have made education more convenient, more affordable, and so forth. And North Central University is one of them. Probably you never heard of this university. But they have over 12,000 students, 100% online. They offer master's and PhD degree programs. And it's accredited university. Just like University of Chicago, it's accredited by HLC, North Central. But where do they operate is even more interesting. This is where the North Central University is located. Where is this? In the middle of desert in Arizona, Prescott Valley in Arizona. That's all they needed. A building with internet access. That's all they needed to operate a university that serves over 12,000 students who are working on their master's and doctorate degrees. The 3-story building was all they needed, and the rest is a parking lot. And where is the athletic departments? Where is the football stadiums and all those things? They don't have that because they believe that they don't need them. And then MOOCs came about. And then why is MOOC so exciting? Because people think that it can give access to millions of students, and if they're free, many more students will be able to pursue their higher education. And supposedly, anyone should be able to access them and then access the contents from better teachers around the world. But did anyone ask that we need MOOCs? Did we ask for MOOCs? Was there anybody who asked for it? I don't think so. I don't think anyone really asked for MOOCs. A lot of universities were so excited to join the MOOC bandwagon. And one of the reasons that many universities got involved in the online education is because of the MOOC wave, the online education wave. It was so scary that when everybody is offering courses in the online education space, so should we. So many universities joined them without really checking their institutional missions and objectives and goals, etc. They just joined them because they did not want to be drawn in the waves. So what happened? Some professors created MOOCs. Some of them were super champions. They were able to put together the videos and lectures online. And many of them were overwhelmed by the sheer amount of work that they had to put together to offer MOOCs. And some of them were successful, and some of them weren't. And then some of them started, and then some of them quit. And some of them walked away from the courses because they just could not handle the number of students that they were facing. They try to find the reset button once they start their MOOCs, but they couldn't find the reset button. So probably you have heard a lot of news about teachers walking away from their MOOCs and quitting in the middle of the MOOC class, etc. A lot of those things happened. And there were a lot of claims that MOOCs are going to make a big difference in the higher education space, and then they're just rushing, and then they're following others, not really without the understanding of the value or the aim or the mission. So blinds are leading the blinds, basically. Is it a MOOC if it doesn't have the massiveness? Because as we all know, that MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Course. But what if it is not massive? What if there aren't any students? What if there aren't 10,000, 100,000 students? Is it still considered a MOOC? If it has only 20 students, is it a MOOC? Probably not. So there are a lot of discussions these days. Is it a MOOC or not a MOOC? To be MOOC or not to be MOOC? I mean, there are many discussions in that regard. And what is the legitimacy of a MOOC if it is not massive? And if it is not open? What if it is not open? Is it still a MOOC? And I'll get to the details of what it means by that. Professors today can freely publish books, as many books as they want. But now it's becoming the trend that the professors cannot publish MOOCs as many as they want. Universities are rigidifying the boundaries, what you can do, what you cannot do in the MOOC space. It is very interesting. The MOOCs are not becoming open anymore, and many MOOCs that have been offered in the online education space becoming smaller and smaller. They're not really massive anymore. And there are many, many concerns about who owns the MOOCs once a professor publishes a MOOC. Is it owned by the university or the professor alone? If the professor leaves the university, what happens to the MOOCs? And who owns all the materials and videos and lecture and all those materials? So there are a lot of concerns in that area as well. What about the MOOCs without the social interaction component? Is it still a MOOC? We often think that if we digitize textbooks and put them online, it becomes an online education. And some people think that if you transfer some of the online education contents to MOOC platforms, it becomes a MOOC, which is a very wrong perception. And many MOOCs, so-called MOOCs, do not have that social interaction components. Mostly it's about watching videos and answering questions or taking exams. I don't consider them as MOOCs because they do not really promote the social learning space. They do not really create the sense of community in the online education space. So probably it's a fake MOOC. And that is becoming a major discussions in the online education space today. So maybe there's the end to MOOC journey. We're not sure. But personally, what I'm hoping is that hopefully there will be MOOC 2.0, MOOC 3.0. Maybe MOOC will change its name to something else. What I'm hoping is that maybe, MOOCs, as it is a massive open online course, hopefully it becomes massive open online collaboration, something that never ends. It's not just the end of a course, but it's something that continuously moving to make a difference, to help people learn together, etc. That's what I'm hoping for. So this is going to be the case. MOOCs will continue to evolve. Things will change. The format, the structure, the pedagogical models, and everything will probably change. And it will play as a major, significant player in the education space. In terms of technological advancement, there are a lot of things that are adding to the evolution of the online education space, especially in these areas of video capturing and content mashups, so that you can capture videos, but in a higher definition, so that when you are sharing your videos, students can cut and paste and mash up their contents to meet their own needs. And also, there will be a lot of interesting research studies around activity analysis algorithms. A lot of algorithms will be developed in these areas. And a lot of cloud service replications, and also social networking-based activities, and engagement engineering. That would be another interesting area where a lot of engineers need to be working together to get the students to engage better in their own learning space. And there are some trends as well. Earlier trend has been curated contents, and then also marketplace, and self-empowered edupreneurship. And at the end of the day, the key words are here. The network is the educator. It's not necessarily a particular professor or a particular class, but the network. The network that you have, it's becoming your educator. So there have been a lot of interesting platforms and systems out there, like a Guru Learning, a search engine for learning. What's common in these areas is this. We need to move the learning model from passive learning to active learning. And that's something that a lot of online education providers are studying very deeply. And from individual learners-based to a network-based learning. These are the areas that I would hope that there'll be a lot of drastic evolution. If we take a look at Khan Academy videos, there are a lot of videos in their site and covering many different topics. But what you can notice here is that still, mostly, it's about video-based contents. You watch, and then you take exams, and then you watch another video. Udacity as well. I have taken the artificial intelligence course from Udacity as well. But the key concept here in these platforms are watching videos. So here's something that I want to share with you this morning. Delivering and displaying doesn't mean learning is taking place. Delivering and displaying, it does not equal to learning. And I think that's something that we have to remember. So there are many companies like Zaption, which creates a layer on top of videos that will add a lot of inquiries and activities on existing videos. And then when they can share those videos, people will be able to learn better by engaging in various types of activities through the videos. However, a star MOOC professor left a MOOC because he gave up. This person gave up the MOOC. He was a big proponent of MOOCs earlier, but he gave up because he said that I cannot teach MOOC anymore because it does not really meet the pedagogical advancements that I really want to seek in my MOOC classes. So things like that are happening at the same time. And then how not to design a MOOC. That's been also a sort of a threaded discussion as well. What are the things that you should avoid so that you will not create a destructive learning environment? At the same time, there have been a lot of interesting movements in parallel besides the MOOCs, like self-empowered edupreneurs. These are sort of the new terms, like a Michelle Phan. She's the one who came up with the YouTube videos on cosmetics, like how to do better makeups and etc. And then she got so famous. And what happened after a year or so is that she was able to get over millions of people following her. And what she does now is that she set up her own cosmetic company, from an instructor on cosmetic to a CEO of a new company because she has been sharing her ideas with the world. It's very interesting. And there's a company like Udemy that is helping many edupreneurs to be edupreneurs, basically. So a company like Udemy.com is offering the platform, the environment for people to come and create your own courses and contents so that you can share with the world. And by doing so, you are monetizing your efforts so that you can sustain your edupreneurship. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of these trends. With the Udemy's very short history, they already got about 1.5 million students and 10,000 published courses and 6,000 published instructors and 200 plus countries, and their revenue is quite astonishing. So one of the trends is the curated contents and marketplace-based education systems, like this company here. And there are so many of them. They are claiming that they will give you better access to education, and some of them are offering courses even for free. And they admit just about any students. And they say that their courses are even free, so you don't even have to spend any dime to take some of these courses. And now a company like this is even more interesting. It's a Dream Degrees. What they are saying is that if you punch in your information, who you are, what you want, how much you want to spend, or if you don't want to spend any money, where you want to study, and they will find you the best courses that you can take. Things like that. It's almost like Expedia.com in the education space. However, one thing is very needed in the online education space, and that is something that is not looked at carefully. The feel for completion. The completion rate has been very low in the online education space. The University of Phoenix, as one of the largest online universities in the US, they enroll over 600,000 students, but the completion rate is less than 10%. That is some serious number that we have to look at. In the online education space, students have a lot of freedom. They have a lot of freedom with time, resources, and no one is watching them. And therefore, they don't have the peer pressure to complete their courses. And that's one of the reasons that they have very a low completion rate. So between clicks and completion, it's a long journey. It's a very long journey. When you sign up and complete, it's a very long journey. And technology alone cannot learn on your behalf. Technology can support at your best, but you're the one who needs to read and engage in the learning activities to complete courses. So I chose this particular platform, NovoEd. Earlier they called this as a venture lab. I picked this platform to teach my MOOC. And I was able to get about 20,000 students from 170 countries. But the way that I was able to design my MOOC was very unique in many ways. I was able to have team formation, like team-based projects, a lot of problem-based learning. So the pedagogical model here was not about just displaying and delivering contents, but engaging students to work on various projects while they're evaluating each other's work. Which is called a peer evaluation. So those are the kind of unique components in my own MOOC. At the same time, I added more things to this course to have more students engage in the activities more effectively. At the same time, students were endorsing each other based on performance using LinkedIn. If you completed a task, you get endorsement from your peers, etc. So I think that universities' role and the boundaries are becoming a little fuzzy now. Do we really need universities in the future to dictate who gets credits and who can perform certain tasks or certain projects? So these are the kind of new trends that I see in the higher education space. And then also a company like UBoost is another company that is very interesting because it helps students to stay motivated in the class. This is one of the companies that is adding a new layer to online education program to get the students to manage their courses better, manage their tasks better, and then projects better. Things like that will be called engagement engineering, as I mentioned earlier. Grand Canyon University, you probably have not heard of this university either. But this is a university that was about to close down in early 2000. And then they decided to convert this is a Christian university, by the way, nonprofit Christian university. And they decided to convert it because they were pressured to close down the university. And I was involved in the earlier due diligence of the investment transaction for this university. And basically, they turned it over to a for-profit university. And then in 2008, they went IPO. And now this university has about 60,000 students, and this company is worth $2 billion, from almost zero value to $2 billion. And for them, retention is very important. 1% of retention increase is equal to $1.2 million revenues. So they know why they need to keep the students motivated and why they need to help students to manage their tasks better so that they can complete their courses. So things like that are really helpful for students to complete their courses. But you need more fuel to help students. And that's something that I found, and it is related to the word that I mentioned earlier that starts with a P, passion. This is probably more important than any other components that you can add in your pedagogical model. I mentioned pedagogical model a lot in my talks because oftentimes we get so excited about technology and we talk a little bit less about pedagogical model. Again, passion is one of the components that I highly promote in any courses that I teach. Ellen Dong Yi, one of the Chinese students who took my MOOC, after taking my MOOC, she said this: after attending a Stanford Open Designing a New Learning Environment course, I decided to devote myself in solving underserved education problems. This is a statement that I get from my students. And when I see students like them, I get motivated to teach. I get inspired. And this is what I mean by passion. If you can ignite passion in your courses, you can get more students to be completing your courses and they can engage better. This middle school student, again, middle school student who took my MOOC and said this: although I'm only a middle schooler, I hope that my team and I will create a new learning environment that could change the course of other children's life. A statement like this from a middle school student who took my open course. This is an inspiration to me because I let anyone come in to take my class. I did not ask any particular age or group of students to come to take the class. And this particular middle school student earned 5 stars as a team leader in his team, which had a PhD students. And it was very interesting that this middle school student was able to participate in the course activities with other doctoral students. So this is the course that I created. It's called the Designing a New Learning Environment. And interestingly, the passion, the keyword that I used earlier, it really speaks by itself. A Chinese student who downloaded the video, translated it in Chinese, and re-uploaded the videos in various backdoors in China because YouTube's and all the social media channels in China are blocked. So they had to find different ways to share these courses. Did I ask the student to do that? No, I did not. The students, like this particular student, did this as a volunteer work. Another student from Middle East who translated these courses into Arabic language and re-uploaded it to the social media channels as well. Another student from Germany took my class. And this particular student downloaded every single lecture and created a low bandwidth media for those students taking this course from Africa, because they could not download the high bandwidth lectures. So this German student did this work for other students in Africa. This is what I mean by passion, to be in this class. Another student from India downloaded all the keywords from my course and created a DNLE glossary. DNLE stands for the Designing a New Learning Environment, the course title, and glossary for other students. Another student from Egypt, in the middle of all the crisis in Egypt, she downloaded all the course materials and created a store for tools used in the course, meaning that she wanted to share some of the best practice tools with other students. And again, this really questions me. Like, how was she able to do that in the middle of all the crisis that she was going through? And taking this course and decide to share some of the best practices and tools with other students in other countries. These are the passion, and then those are the components that I believe are very important in a higher education. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what was I talking about in my class. I've been doing mobile learning research for a few years, and this is one of the areas that I started to do mobile learning. In 2006, Baja California, Mexico, these kids never go to school because there is no school for these kids. There's no books, no library, no teachers. That's when I started to think about mobile learning project for these kids. And I started to expand the mobile learning project for kids who do not have the quality access to education. And I came up with an idea. If they do not have internet access, if they do not have electricity, I will give them education by connecting the mobile learning server to a battery. And I influenced the companies to come up with a product like this, Smile Plug. Smile stands for Stanford Mobile Inquiry-Based Learning Environment. This is a little plug. It's a server. It's a Wi-Fi network router. And it's a storage. It is everything in one box. And it has only one button, only power button. When you turn on the power button, it instantly creates a mobile learning network no matter where you are. And if you have a battery, just plug into battery, then it creates the network. And I've been taking this box to many different countries where they do not have reliable electricity or any high quality education videos. And this particular group of students are using mobile devices to create their own questions. And I asked them, why did you come up with this question? And the students said, well, this question is very important, but this question is not in the textbook. I'm empowering the students to come up with their own learning materials. And that's what I mean by contextualizing contents. It's not about downloading contents from one single server somewhere, but empowering students to be able to create their own contents, localization, contextualization happening at the same time. And I have taken this project to Tanzania as well. These kids wanted to learn English, but they didn't have any English textbooks. So they created their own learning objects. Within 20 minutes, they created their own question sets by taking pictures of things around them. They took pictures of a bottle, water bottle, or rocks and animals and plants, and then they simply said, what is this in English? And this is how they were able to create their own learning contents using mobile devices. And now, this project is accessible through smileglobal.net. What I'm trying to do is getting the students to create learning questions and share them around the world. So you can actually go to this website and then start to create questions. You can solve the questions that are created by other students in many different countries. What am I doing is this. In higher education and K-12 education systems throughout the world, what we are doing a lot is these areas. The lower level of learning, remembering and understanding. That's about what a lot of teachers are doing in classrooms. We explain things, we teach things, hoping that students will remember some of them, and some of them they will understand. And that's what they're doing. But what I'm doing is this. I'm asking students to create questions and create their own learning activities and evaluate each other's work and analyze each other's work and apply their own knowledge to their practical problem-solving scenarios. So I already said a few P words here. Different pedagogical model. I said passion is very important, and I'm looking for paradigm shift, and I'm interested in problem-based learning and project-based learning. And what do we think that the future will be like? If we keep educating students under this keyword, education, where a lot of remembering and memorizing takes place, versus those students who are creating things, who are presenting things, who are synthesizing, applying, evaluating, what will be the difference between these two groups of students? I think that in the 21st century, we need students who are not only memorizing and understanding, but applying and creating and presenting and synthesizing and evaluating and so forth. And that's what we need in the 21st century education models. Especially in the higher education, we don't want students to be just memorizing, but we want them to be creating. So some of the students who took my MOOCs were from Oxford University, and they invited me to come give a talk at Oxford University. So I went to Oxford, I gave a talk about what I was doing, and some of the students were inspired, and they went on to do the projects that I was doing. Some of them actually started their project, mobile learning project in India, and some of them started to do the projects in underserved communities around the world. So that's why, as I mentioned earlier, changing MOOC to MOOC, massive open online course, to massive open ongoing collaboration. That's what I'm seeking. And countries like Zimbabwe, we have a medical school in Zimbabwe where they're creating questions with the SMILE project. And at Stanford University, we're examining the questions they are creating from Stanford. So basically, whatever the questions they are creating in Zimbabwe, we are able to analyze them. And that's how we collaborate. By examining the questions, we know the quality of education in the medical school in Zimbabwe. So questions are the research data. And that's the kind of projects that we're working on. And with mobile technology, the reason that it is very important in the 21st century is because we have more mobile users than toothbrush users today. We have 7 billion people, and we have more than 6 billion mobile users. And as you know, some of the regions in the developing world, they don't have toothbrush, but they do have mobile phones. And that is the phenomena. And that's why I think that mobile technology is becoming more and more important. I'm not going to go into the details about what kind of a mobile technology research studies are being done, but facial recognition or mobile augmented intelligence or the storage, not just the gigabytes, but petabytes and mobile gigabit bandwidth. All these research trends are being looked at the moment. And so it is getting more and more exciting. So when you talk about MOOCs, MOOCs may apply to the developed countries. What about the developing countries? Those people who really need to have access to MOOCs are not getting the MOOCs experience. And that's why I want to change that experience. And that's why I started this SMILE project, where mobile devices are used to empower students to create questions and share them and help each other learn better, etc. So projects like SMILE, I am doing in multiple levels. From first grade math class all the way to medical school and graduate schools, getting students to create questions and getting the students to evaluate their own questions, etc. And I noticed another big problem by getting students to do that. The biggest problem that I have noticed is that when students are given the opportunity to create their own questions, there's a problem with that. The professors cannot solve those questions. I'm serious. When students are given the opportunity, even in the elementary school or middle school, high school, and the college level, and even graduate school level, this is a medical school in Argentina. When students teamed up together to create questions, one single professor could not solve the questions, so they had to assemble a panel of professors to discuss the questions. And I think that is the kind of learning environment that I'm envisioning. I really like that environment where the professor cannot solve the questions. I like that. I think we need to give students more opportunities to be really the learners. But we're taking away the opportunities a lot. And we are, as I was mentioning earlier, Stanford University working with a medical university in Zimbabwe where they are sharing questions and so forth. That is the kind of learning environment that I'm envisioning. So here is a summary. The phenomena that we see today is that we are concerned a lot about numbers, unit cost, number of units deployed, or is it a free or open contents, delivery and display mean learning or not, flipping in the same box, and not much focus on pedagogical models, and that is a big concern. And we don't see too many successful top-down approaches. I see a lot of governments in many countries where they decide to give tablets to every student in their education systems, and also and notebooks and computers and a lot of technology-centric projects. They're not so successful. And more importantly, there's a DNA issue, a social DNA or cultural DNA. What I mean by that is if it doesn't sound, if it doesn't smell, if it doesn't look like the real thing, and a lot of people think that it's not a real thing. And that's what's happening with the technology-based education. Although there are a lot of technology enthusiasts, still, people think that we need to look at the books. We need to look at the paper copy books, and that's better than the digital books. And when students are learning with the mobile phones, they think that they're playing games. They're not really learning. And those are the sort of the DNA issues that we have. We're not fully crediting those innovations in the education space. And that will take a lot of time, maybe a generation. And this is the, finally, the most important slide of all my presentations here. Technology, yes, it is important. It creates new possibilities. It's an enabling agent. But we also need to look at the content. The content needs to be contextualized and localized. Content needs to be applicable to the local community. So that's why I do not like that neo-imperialism kind of approach where my content is the best content, therefore you should use my content. I don't like that kind of approach. I think that we need to involve the local communities, local regions to create their best contents. And more importantly, pedagogy. Oftentimes we do not look at enough on pedagogical models. And without the pedagogical models, the technology projects cannot be successful. And pedagogy makes your learning contents more shareable, replicable, and it catalyzes learning. And on top of that, the value perception is also very important. Value perception means what do they think about your program? What do they think about your innovation? What is their perception? What's the perception of the individual? What is the perception of the teachers? What is the perception of the community? What is the perception of the policymakers? You need to start from there. Perception and the value perception is where you need to start and move backward to pedagogy and content and arrive at technology that best meet your model. Oftentimes, we see a lot of people in organizations starting from technology and moving back up, and they often fail by doing so. So one of colleagues, Ron Adner from Dartmouth College, he says that we need to use a wide lens. We need to look at things with a wide lens. You cannot look at things with a narrow lens because you're going to miss a lot of things and you will fail if you do so. And I totally agree with him that we need a wide lens. A quote from our Dean of Graduate School of Business at Stanford. He said this. This is related to the passion that I mentioned earlier. The millennial students, those earning higher education degrees in the 21st century, walking through our doors, don't just want to make money. They want to make a difference in the world. So this is something that we need to think about. How do we come up with the best pedagogical model that ignites passion among students so that you are not only meeting the needs of the students, but you're also helping students reach their full potential? And I think that is something that we need to look at when we are talking about higher education. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Paulo Freire. He's the educational philosopher from Brazil. He once mentioned the pedagogy of the oppressed. He mentioned that the learning is in a recurring passage through a cyclical process of experiential learning. And learning is a reflection and action upon the world in order to transform it. So he talks about transforming people in the society and in general. And I totally believe in that model where when we are given as a student an opportunity to learn, we want to learn not just to memorize things, but to change the world, to transform it. I know it is very hard. It is very hard because of the social, cultural DNA issues and misperceptions and misunderstandings, all those things. But change is hard, and sometimes your approach may look strange and awkward. And you may even doubt about yourself as well. It is certainly a long journey. And when we make mistakes, oftentimes we get laughed at. And you don't get recognition unless you succeed. And that is a reality. But I'd like to share with you this person's history, Dick Fosbury. I don't know if you know this person, but this is the guy who did the high jump in the backward. He's the one who did the high jump backward for the first time. When he did that, a lot of people laughed at him and asked him, why do you do that? That's inefficient. That is not good. That's not the way that people do things. But he insisted that this is a better way, and I'm going to prove it, and he did prove it. So I can imagine what kind of troubles and hardship that he had to go through to make a difference. So what can we do as an educators? I'd like to share with you this artwork. This beautiful artwork consists of broken glasses on the floor. Broken pieces of glasses on the floor. And the broken glasses are reflecting the light. And I think that's what we need to do. We're educators. We're not perfect. We may be broken. We're not perfect. As long as we are reflecting the light, maybe we can be beautiful. Maybe we can do something beautiful for this world as an educator. And that's what I like to say. And I have nothing further to say. But the last thing that I might say is this. I don't know if you're going to get one of these. I'm not going to get one of these. I decided not to have a tombstone when I die. But when you get one, you're going to have your birth date and death date, right? What's that thing in between the birth date and the death date? Dash. That's all you get. Your life is dash. Life is a dash. That was it. So what are you going to do in your life? As an educator, I'm sure many of us are here in this room. Let's be beautiful by reflecting the light, and let's ignite passion in our pedagogical models when we talk about education, and hope that we can accomplish the goal of making a difference in this world. So that's all I wanted to say this morning. Thank you.